Starting this podcast was an unexpected step of obedience of something that God has called me to do. Through this podcast, I will be interviewing ordinary people who have seen and experienced God move in extraordinary ways throughout their lives. I pray that this will build your faith and encourage you to testify of God's goodness in your everyday lives. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Testify of God's Goodness podcast. I have here with us Darren Thorne. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Darren. So your work or callings in life, your family, and then how do we know each other?
So right now I'm a full-time farmer.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been a full-time farmer my whole life, as we've discussed. I spent 30 years trucking. I went over the road as a mover, coast to coast, for about 20 of those years.
Mm-hmm.
So I was away from home quite a bit. I'm married to Teresa Thorne. I've got two kids, twins,
Mm-hmm.
Sarah and Hunter. They're both married. I got a new granddaughter. She's a year and a half old or so, and another one on the way.
Cute.
We got another grandchild coming. And Sarah, we met, I don't know, several years ago at the fair.
Yes.
Which is
so I went to school with your kids,
right.
And that's what we're around the same age. And then we showed together a lot. So that's how we knew each other. And then, so how's Dottie? Who is that? Your mom or
That's my mother-in-law?
Mother-in-law. Okay,
right.
Yeah, she went to our church for a while, and she is a hoot. We love her so much. So, yeah. So we, and then a couple weeks ago, your one of your assistants reached out about you doing the podcast. So I was super excited about that. I want to share the story with you guys. I just shared it with him. It was a really faith building thing for me because I was praying like, God, is this something you want me to keep doing? Because I didn't have a lot of podcasts lined up, and I was praying that I guess a few weekends ago, and then on Monday I had 5 people in one day reach out about doing it. So I am thankful that like God's hand is on this, and I'm going to do it as long as He leads, and I'm excited for you to be able to share your heart for how you have been called into this and how you've been able to serve our state and just your plans for the future. So tell us, what part of your testimony do you feel led to share today?
So it's a hard, my life is a hard thing to share.
Yeah.
It hasn't always been easy. It's never been easy, as a matter of fact. But I believe that it's important today for me to share my life. It's taken me a long time to do this. I never talked about my life. I never, it was a private thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to take this opportunity and speak to the young people specifically. First, I want to thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
It's so important for young people to get involved. It's important for young people to understand that it's okay to believe in God and to follow God. It's not, it might not be the end thing to do, but it's the right thing to do, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But anyway, to get into, as most people know, I lost my dad when I was 7 years old. My mother was, my mother raised me and my sister. My sister was mentally handicapped. We didn't have a lot, but we had what we needed. We, I grew up kind of rough and hard. My family was tough. They were hard people to. They grew up. I come from an old family.
Yeah.
So I was fourth kid.
Same.
But my granddad was born in 1896, so they had a big family.
Wow.
And my on my dad's side, 1896. My mother's side was 1899, and my grandmothers on both sides was 1900.
Wow.
So I grew up in my wife's generation, but by a whole different generation of people.
Yeah.
Right? So we grew up hard. We grew up strict, very strict people. but the biggest thing in my life I want people to understand is we hear in society where um, if you come from a single family home, it's okay to be, that's why you're going to fail, or why, it's a struggle, or that's why we're having the problems we're having in the country, right?
Yeah.
We hear that all the time.
Yeah, we do.
And I'm not saying that we don't need, a mom and a dad in our family, but sometimes we don't have those. It's out of our control.
Yes.
What I am trying to get through to people is, and young people especially, and I spoke about this in the junior high when I won the primary the first time and the general, and that was the first time I publicly spoke about anything about my life. But I want people to understand that just because you come from a hard background, well, your husband is a testament of this too, right? So we can overcome. And I wasn't always. I didn't look. My mother was a God-fearing woman. My mother had me in church from the time I was born to the time I got old enough to decide I wasn't going to church anymore.
Yeah.
And she never pushed it. She always said that she believed that if you are brought up in the church, you'll come back to the church. And I always, whatever.
Yeah.
You know how it is. But and it took me a lot of years because I struggled. I struggled with, I never hated God, but I always questioned God.
Yeah.
Why did I not have a dad? And mom never remarried. She never dated. She never did anything, right? Wow. She just worked hard to make sure that me and my sister Denise was taken care of.
Yeah.
And I struggled with a lot of things. I never was a drug addict, but I was alcohol was my weakness. And I used that as a crutch from the time I was about 15 years old till I was about 28 years old when I stopped, when my kids were born. And then I was baptized. I found, I tried to come back to Christ. I was about 23 years old, and it just didn't catch.
Yeah.
So I had a hard time. I had a great wife that we were married when we were 20. I was 23. She would have been 22, and she's helped me through all of this and stuck with me through all of this. But the big takeaway from this is no matter what we do, we can succeed.
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near a rich man monetarily, but as family, I could not ask for a better life.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't change anything because I've got good kids. I've got a great wife that's kept me grounded, and we've all always worked hard. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. And there's never, I struggled with, and this is something that probably only my wife knows. I don't even know if I've told her, but I struggled with suicide before I met my wife.
Yeah.
Now after that, I've never had that struggle.
Wow.
But beforehand, it was tough. But again, God can bring us through, and we don't even know He's doing it.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know, but I can look back from today back and say everything that I've went through has led me to this point in my life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
God has brought me through all of this for this point. I believe, and this comes to that calling, I believe God put me here for this reason.
Yes.
I love my state, I love my country, and I love my county. And I get a lot of pushback that's, even from so-called Christians that, when I was running the first time, I said that God's chosen me to do this for some reason, whether I win or lose. There's been a reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
And I got mocked for that from people that, they said, well, he says he's a chosen one. I've never said that. I just said that God has led me to here for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So
well, you see that quote in the book of Esther, how he was saying, like, maybe you were chosen for such a time as this, like,
right.
And there are
we don't know.
In our lives. Yeah.
And we just have to go with our heart. And I was never that guy. I always leaned on myself. God has always been there. He's always been in my head, but he was never in my heart.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference, right?
Yes,
Just because you
absolutely.
understand it doesn't mean that you follow it.
Yeah.
You lead it, or however you want to.
Yeah.
But there's, if again, grit and determination has got me to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And I want young people like yourself that are struggling. You're not struggling, but
Yeah.
young people like you all that are struggling in life. Today's society is hard. It's hard. They're going through different things that I had to in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And I might not have survived it if I'd have lived in this era.
Yeah.
Right? Where social media is everywhere.
Yeah.
Everything is in your face. We didn't know what was happening in California for months.
Yeah, we were not created to know all those things. Yeah. And it explains why anxiety is so high.
Correct.
Like social media, the news, all that stuff is so fear driven. I've heard 90% of it is created for you to feel fearful, and that makes you keep coming back for more.
I'm glad. Yes, I believe that is all this is by design, right? Control, to control the people, and that's how we. And I don't know why it's a power thing, I reckon, but we have social workers in our schools. And why do we have to have that now? We didn't have it then, right? In my struggles as a kid, being the second grader, losing my dad, I dealt with a lot of stuff, but the teachers, I didn't have social worker.
Yeah.
We had our preacher, we had our teachers, our principals, they just took care of it, right? It wasn't a big deal. We moved on with life.
Yeah.
And today you watch the social media stuff and it's, feel bad for me, I guess it's just very disappointing in what we're teaching our kids, and no wonder they're struggling mentally or, with, like you said, anxiety or whatever, because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You've got these people on it's okay not to know who you are or what you are. And I don't accept that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And what I hear you saying that really stands out to me. So all the things that you've overcome, God has gotten you through that, and it's taken you to have that grit and tenacity and hard work to make it work. So you can't just say, okay, God's going to bless me. I'm just going to sit here and wait on his blessings. I'm going to sit here and wait for these things to come. No, we work hard, and God does bless that. We do see his hand in it, but it takes a lot of hard work on our part, right? And work itself is not of the fall. Like a lot of the broken stuff that we deal with in our lives, it does result from, the first sin coming into the world. But work was a part of it beforehand. Now it did make work a lot harder, like after the fall, right? But work is a blessing. Having that purpose in your life is a blessing. Being chosen for different things, like that God is calling you to, that is a blessing. And even though God chose you to be in that position, has there been hard stuff that you go through? Yes. And sometimes I think we think, okay, if God's chosen me for this, it's going to be easy going. And no, Jesus says, like, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And we are not in the fire alone. Like, and I've used this analogy before, but with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they entered the fire, they said that there was a fourth man that looked like the Son of God. That was in the Old Testament. That was before Jesus entered the scene. So there's so many trials that we go through that you can read Old Testament, New Testament, that shows us, like, and that's why we have to be careful about getting our theology or learning about God only through social media, because there is a lot of people out there that are preaching the prosperity gospel where you give and then you receive and God's going to bless that. And like, that's not how it is. There is going to be these trials and tribulations that we walk through.
And the problem was that I think we interpret that as monetary, right? We look at it as when God says we're going to prosper, he everybody thinks it's money.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that anymore, right? I used to think the same thing. But today I don't see that at all. Like I said earlier, I'm a rich man just because of my family.
Yes, I agree.
And my health, and that's and given me this opportunity, because
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't be sitting here with you today.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be. I never spoke before a crowd before I did this.
Wow. Yeah.
So you're telling me that I did this? No, God
Yeah.
did that,
For
right?
sure.
God gave me the words to say. God, the first time I spoke in front of people, I made a fool of myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I had a temper,
Yeah.
and I got mad
Yeah.
because the speaker before me.
That's hard.
So
Yeah.
so it was hard for me to control that.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, God controls it all, and he put me here for a reason,
Yeah.
and I don't
100%.
know what that reason is. I question it.
Yeah.
It's like, why I don't want to do this.
Oh
I
yeah.
really,
I've felt that feeling before.
yeah, I don't want to do this. But I think there's a reason, and as long as the door's open, I will continue to walk through
Yeah.
it until it stops.
That's so good. And think about if we lived in our comfort zone, our faith would not be built,
Correct.
right? It a lot of it is God telling us to step out of our comfort zone, and he builds our faith, he provides for us. And it's not saying providing in like with money. Our bank account is not big whatsoever. Like there's times where we're like, okay, God, you're gonna have to provide for this, and he always does. But when it comes to like Jesus said that he will give us life more abundant, right? Where the enemy came to steal and kill and destroy. So when we're living for the world, that is no wonder we experience so much anxiety and fear and depression and all these things. And don't hear me say like as a Christian you can't experience those things, because you definitely can. It's a hard world that we live in. But when we keep our eyes focused on Christ, we can see his hand even in the depths and even in the valleys that we're walking through.
Sure. It's the day that I hit my knees and said that I give everything to God.
Yeah.
I don't have that. I don't have the anxiety as I used to.
Yep.
I don't worry about the cattle markets, or
Mm-hmm.
I do think about it. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, these things are there, but I don't lose sleep over it.
Yep.
Right? There was a time that in my life I would pace. I would sleep an hour or two a night because I'm worried about the night. What's coming. Teresa's got this thing on here that says, "Fear not tomorrow. God's already there," and it
Yes,
sits
that's
there
so
under our
good.
TV. So
Yeah.
you're always looking at that, and there's nothing any more true, right?
Yeah.
So the day that I come to that and gave everything over to God and said, "Look, I have no control over any of this. I can't control the cattle market. I can't control what my chickens do, other than what we can do,
Yeah.
you know. So I can't control weather. I can't control anything.
Yeah.
Nothing in my life can I control, other than what you said earlier, the work. The
Yeah.
work part, we can control that, and we make sure we do the part that God has put us in control of,
Mm-hmm.
and we move forward.
Yep.
And it, it it's I don't a non-believer cannot understand
Yeah.
the relief that comes off of a man's shoulders when you
100%.
give yourself to God fully.
Yeah. I've heard the quote and I was just reading it this morning. So, like, our control ends at the edge of our fingertips. So,
Yeah,
anything
that's
outside of
excellent.
us, like, we can't. And I've heard a quote by Priscilla Shire, and she was saying, like, somebody told her, I feel like it was one of Billy Graham's relatives, but somebody told her when she was young, figure out what the front lines are for your life. And the front lines for my life, it is pouring into teens, it is pouring into women and discipling and sitting down and just listening to people. Especially my sister-in-laws, they pick on me all the time. They're like, people are so drawn to you. They open up about their stories. I mean, everywhere we were camping, we were grocery shopping, like people just open up about their stories, and I'm able to just pray with them. And I feel like God's like, she just does not care. I'm just gonna keep putting people in her path. And I do pray for that. I pray for opportunities to share, but it's unexpected ways. Like somebody came up to me, I was picking out laundry detergent at Food Line last week, and they came up to me because they had heard the podcast and then they shared some stuff. And I love those things, and I love hearing what God's doing in people's lives and that they are, but that is the front lines for me. So like we can't be comparing, oh, this is Sarah's front lines and why am I not doing that? Well, it might not be your front lines. I was not called into what you're doing. Maybe that's your front lines, the work that you're doing, and do not step back from those front lines. Keep doing it. There's no mention of retirement in the Bible. And so
No,
keep doing it and keep living for the Lord and keep serving him where God's placed you. Quit looking to the left and the right, like, and comparing yourself. Again, maybe set up some boundaries with social media, maybe step back from that in order to do the work right in front of you well.
Yep. I spoke to a church probably last summer, maybe this fall, I don't remember. But I had that, I don't get invited to churches very often because I have a bad habit of saying what's on my mind.
I respect that, though. Yeah.
So, and I told it, I told them there exactly what you're saying there. We all don't have this. I don't know what your, I was asked the question, so what are you suggesting we do? And I don't know that answer, right? I don't know what your strengths are. Maybe it's being a youth minister or like yourself, just helping the youth, right? I don't go and serve the poor. I don't know. Yeah. But we have to stand up as a church, and as Christians, we need to take those responsibilities back.
Yeah.
As Christians, we've dropped the ball on that. Yeah. We allow the government to take care of our poor. And God didn't say that our government should, or Jesus didn't say our government should take care of the poor. It's us as Christians. Yeah. Right. And that's the problem that I had. Not just the poor, but everything that we do. Yeah. We are afraid. We sit back and we don't want to rock the boat. Yeah. As Christians, we've come to a place, and something else I like to always say, if I'm allowed, or if I'm not given the opportunity, because I want to say it, but the church has failed us as a nation because we're conforming to society instead of society conforming to us. Yeah, we're changing who we are, and God's not going to like that. He's not going to look favorable on that. Right. Right. Don't take to, don't add to or take away from these words, right? Yeah. So these are things that we've got to be careful of, and that's what we're doing as Christians today. Saying, well, I heard something the other day. Well, the Bible just doesn't fit the 21st century. I don't agree with that. God didn't. No. There's no date on the Bible.
Exactly. No, that's until the day He comes. Around so long. Yeah. And I feel like somebody who made that comment, they probably haven't read the Bible for themselves.
Oh, probably not.
Because spending time in the Word every day, I'm like, I go into it with the lens of what does this tell me about God? I used to go into it like, what does this say about me? But thank God the Bible's not written about me. It would be a terrible book. You know what I mean? Like, compared to it being written about God. But also, I'm like, okay, this is how we are called to live as Christians. This is how, it gives you advice with marriage, with parenting, with just how to be a good person and make a difference in the world. And it still applies. It was written like thousands of years ago, and it still applies to our life today.
How could we get through society without the Bible, right? Think about America. We have the 10 Commandments and we have the Bill of Rights, and they're the same. But yet people don't want to believe in the Bible, and they don't want to believe in our Constitution or our Bill of Rights. Yeah. But the Constitution was the rock that this nation was built on. Yeah. In our morals. Right? Yes. So the non-believer says we shouldn't kill, but why is that? Yeah. If we didn't have the 10 Commandments, the 10 Commandments is who says that. It was what told us thou shalt not kill. It's not man. Yeah. And so they get their morals, whether they believe it or not. Yes. From God.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100%. Yes. So with the question, what is some of your most memorable moments in the position that you're in?
The probably the biggest, I didn't have a part of it, but it was between the time that I was won the primary and in 22 to the general election in the fall of 22. Yeah, I went and witnessed the vote on the abortion in the state of West Virginia. Yeah. That was my most memorable time, probably, whether I'm here another 2 years or 20 years, I don't know. Yeah. That will set, and I had no part in it, but that was a great time for the state of West Virginia. Yes. And for our country, Yeah. but the abortion ban was the highlight of. Otherwise, if I hadn't done this, I would have never been there to witness that vote.
Yes.
And I believe that will always be the highlight of my political career.
That's so cool. I've read the quote. I love reading, and I read the quote like because I think a lot of times, and I've even gotten this thought process of like I need to do this, this, and this, and because I used to be like I've gotten better about it, but such a people pleaser, and like, but God valued us just as much on the day that we were created in our mother's womb as He values me right in this minute serving Him, and just to keep that in mind, like God values, and the Bible says He knit us together in our mother's womb. And I get you're talking about single parents and stuff. If you feel like you cannot care for your child, like there's so many resources out there. I know we just had Chris and Tony on this past week, and at their church, Little Cacapon, they have the Embrace Grace ministry where they serve these single parents and these young mamas, and or like there's fostering and adopting, like your child, like they could do so much good in this world, and they are so valued. Like babies are not a mistake, even if they're not planned. They're never a mistake in God's eyes.
No, He knew us before we were in the womb.
Yeah.
So that should tell us everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we have those same non-believers that'll complain that we haven't cured cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe they killed them.
Yeah,
they
I've heard
very
that before.
possibly
Yeah.
could have. We don't know.
Yeah.
And that's not a risk I'm willing to take.
Yes.
And I will be judged for that one day. That's probably one of the scariest things of my job right today.
Okay.
I believe that I will be judged for my votes.
Yeah.
By God.
Yes.
Right. So, another memorable time was, and I was a part. We got to vote, and we outlawed transgender surgery for youth in the state of West Virginia.
Yes.
That was a big step too.
Yeah.
That wasn't a fight for 50 years, but it was still a fight that was going to come if we didn't get ahead of it.
Yeah.
So that is a very very big vote. And again, that was a vote that I really believe God will judge me on one day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we should protect kids at all costs.
100%. And like you can listen to testimonies of people that went on these puberty blockers or like got the transgender surgery, especially, I mean, there's ones by adults and younger, like the younger generation who did it, but 10 years later, they're regretting it and they're struggling with so much. And it's heartbreaking like that this stuff is being pushed so much by some people in the medical field for financial gain.
Correct.
And yeah, so that's really cool that you're a part of that. And I do agree like that God placed you in that position so that you can make those votes, not just from your own selfish gain, but it is like in a way that will advance the kingdom and make a difference for the kingdom. So I'm thankful that you do that and you're bold in your faith in that way. So what are some of your main goals in this position?
I kind of get beat up on this one because the newspaper asks me this every now and then.
Okay.
And they beat me up because I don't really set goals.
Okay.
I'm not out here to change the world. I'm just trying to make my dent. Right. Things come up that I'll be passionate about. I really didn't know at the beginning what my strengths would be in Charleston. Again, I didn't even know why I was there or what was going on. I've learned though in the last couple of years that or the last year, I guess, that my strength is agriculture.
Yeah.
So agriculture is, and again, I have not been a full-time farmer my whole life. So there are those that, know a lot more than I do, but I learned and I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I know that I know enough to try to help us in the state. So I have big ambitions in agriculture, and I will work towards that. But as far
That's
as
cool.
goals and just the general public, I don't really have. There's today. There's no real. West Virginia's sitting in a great place. We've done a lot. I don't have the fight for abortion.
Yeah.
We've already settled the transgender thing. There are some small things like I've always, since I've been there, I've had a bill that I've introduced. It's never gone anywhere, that we don't have drag queen shows in schools or where minors can, but it won't gain any traction.
Yeah.
So I'll probably continue to push those, but I, I, I life I've never well I can't say that because life I set my goals to pretty high, but here I try to listen to the people, I guess.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I try to listen to the people and what's on them, what their struggles are. I try to go and work on those things.
Yeah, that's good. And even just what God's placed right before you, right? As
Right.
issues comes,
Yeah.
like being led by the Spirit, like what God, I'm just partnering with you. The phrase that I felt like God laying on my heart for this year has been like yoke up, and just yoking up with God, and being in partnership with Him. Like, God, where do you want to go with this? What do you want to do? Like, and it is a cool thing to get to serve Him in that way, and it is an abundant life getting to do it that way with God.